This is We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. Join us as we interview creators, discuss our favorite folklore, and share original spooky stories. I'm Jeff C. Carter, and this week we're talking with Stephanie Rose about Death by TBR Press's Twisted Tales to Tell in the Night, a Halloween anthology. Stephanie Rose is an author, librarian, and online horror bookshop owner, despite the continuing challenges of being disabled. She has an MS in Human Services and an MS in Information and Library Science, and is an HWA and ABA member. When she's not watching horror films and true crime, obsessing about all things spooky, or counting down to Halloween, she can be found in Washington with her partner, 4 cats, and 1 dog. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to make a couple stops on the way to our main project today, but the first thing I want to ask you about is Hiding Lies. Can you give us a summary about your first book?
Yes, I actually like my summary that's the back of the book, but I also love to creep on Goodreads for the good reviews. One of my favorite reviews actually, I think, kind of hits the nail in the head, and it's the spawn of Carolyn Kepner's You and an episode of Criminal Minds births a new thriller horror, Hiding Lies. It stabs its knife into a few genres, thriller, horror, and it has all the book needs of a twisty thriller depicting the relationship between a forensic photographer and a serial killer with a POV from the killer's perspective, which is one of my favorite parts of the book. It originally came out in 2024, and it's being re-released, and it will be, they call it in the book world, author's preferred edition. I'm a Swiftie, so I'm calling it Stephanie's version. So it's my version's coming out, being re-released through Death by TBR Press on the 9th of September. So it's a new cover. There's an author's note that kind of explains a little bit of the changes that were made and a new ending that I think a lot more people are going to enjoy. It really was a bucket list thing. I wanted to write a book before I died, and now I'm like, I have so many ideas and I'm working on multiple projects right now writing. I'm like, holy shit, I'm a writer. It really feels very gratifying now that it's part of who I am. And it's definitely helped me cope with a lot in the last 5 years. So it's exciting.
Which version of the book did I read?
Was there a lot of blood at the end?
A lot of blood.
Okay, then yeah, that's the new one.
Lots of Blood brings us to your upcoming project, Small Town Slasher, which releases in 2026.
Yes. I feel like Hiding Lies is my baby. It's my first book, but it's not who I am now. I wrote Small Town Slasher in a month and a half. I wrote it very fast. After the election, I was not doing well in November, and it was about a week after the election. I was like, I am so filled with rage, and I'm upset, and I have all these emotions, and I don't know how to handle it, and I need to kill a lot of people on the page. So I wrote it between November 14th and New Year's Eve was my goal to be done with it before editing. My first draft, I wanted it to be done, and I did. I immersed myself in it. I had a very hard set word count I wanted to hit every day, and I hit it. 1,500 to 2,000 words was every day, so I could hit around 70 to 90 for the end. And Jenna is the protagonist, and she is a lot of who I am. And I wanted to set it somewhere that I've never been. I knew that I couldn't set it in Idaho because Stephen Graham Jones has Idaho covered. I mean, you think Idaho and you're in horror, you're like proof rock. I was like, okay, so where else can I set it? And I didn't want to set it in Washington, PNW, because that's where my first book was set. So I actually metaphorically walked the streets of Montana, and I picked these towns and I walked them on Google Maps, and I just wanted to get a feel for it, the town. And I really do think you really can get to know a town. And I will say for sure, because I was on a podcast with somebody recently who is from Montana, and I was like, oh no. And he's like, no, you actually did perfect job of describing it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it's proof you can use Google Maps to really capture a place without even being there, because I can't really travel because I'm disabled. So it gives me an opportunity to explore a new place without being there and give it justice and really capture it. So Small Town Slasher follows Jenna, and Jenna she doesn't really travel. She doesn't really do much. She doesn't really go outside her bubble, but she found this really haunted, horror themed Airbnb, which is actually based on an Airbnb I did find on Airbnb that is horror themed. I never name it or anything, and it's in a completely different location of the country, but the interior photos and stuff were definitely inspiring to kind of create the setting. And that's kind of where the idea started. And then I was like, oh, this isn't enough to make a book. It was a really great like chunk. And I had been rewatching Hush by Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel. And I was like, I love the idea of that, of these killers that are like, they just kind of attack for no reason. There's no tie to you. And that's scary to me. But then I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's some type of years that have gone by and there's a tragedy in this town, and kind of worked from that. And I love 90s horror. It's my favorite genre. So, and slashers and Scream. So it's really a love letter to the Scream franchise and to Kevin Williamson and how much he's impacted who I am as a person, from Dawson's Creek to I Know You Did Last Summer to Scream. I mean, like, it really is so much. So I tell people, like, if you don't like slashers, why are you picking it up, first of all? But also, like, if you don't like Scream, you might not like it because there's a lot of references to Scream, but that's on purpose. And every chapter opens up with a final girl quote, which I love. And I really had fun with it. It's a lighter slasher. Like, it has deep moments and there's character development and there's wonderful people that I had to kill, and I was sad about that, but you can't have everybody live or it's not a slasher. And I love the way I use my own disability in my character Jenna and how it actually helps her in the end without giving anything away. And I think that there was a lot of kills that were really fun to write. So here's a particular kill that I loved, that basically encompassed any politician I was thinking of at the time, and was able to write them into a lovely kill scene that involves a bathtub. So it was very fun. It makes me know that I love slashers. I'm definitely going to dabble in other subgenres just to push myself as a writer. And now I'm like back to another slasher that's set in the summer that I'm kind of working on. I just think they're so fun, and my whole process of writing is also watching a lot of things and reading a lot of things. I probably watch more than I read to prep for writing a book and during the writing of the book. I think I've seen the Scream franchise about 50 times while I was writing it to really capture certain kills, certain types of kills. Like, I really watch for, like, how does it sound when the knife goes in and out? When I'm watching like Scream, I'm like having my headphones on. Like, those are the kinds of things, the auditory things. Like, I can't just obviously go do that. That'd be really bad. So I have to watch these movies that really capture it, that have good audio editing, and I can really feel it and see it. And then I can capture on the page because I read cinematically, and that's the way I write, because I want people to be able to see it.
When did you decide to start Death by TBR Books Press?
I think when I knew I was going to have my rights back and I wanted to publish, I wanted to publish Hiding Lies, and I wanted to have full control over all of it. And then I was like, well, I have these connections. I've been in this field for a while now, and I've had the bookshop for a long time, for almost 7 years. This November, 7 years, which is crazy. It's been a brick and mortar and online. It was general, then it went genre. Now it's almost fully horror. And I was like, well, I have a good following on Instagram. I know people, and I want to do anthologies. And I've been so passionate about that I was like, okay, well, let's do my first open call. And then kind of Twisted Tales came from that. And I think I will hopefully maybe do novellas or novels in the future that aren't my own. But I think for me, having such a up and down with my health, I think having short stories is smart because I can read, edit, and focus on one story here, put that down for a little bit, and then move on, versus like an ongoing relationship with somebody that I have to continually work on one thing, especially when I'm trying to write my own work still, because I definitely want to be able to do both. And I think it's easier to do both when I'm doing short stories. That's kind of how it came about. My first open call was huge enough that I have 2 volumes of the Halloween, and now we have an open call that today is the first day we're accepting for Yuletide horror. And I'm dabbling with ideas for even the next one after that now. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but I have some ideas.
You're finally coming for Easter?
I mean, I might. I actually was, one of the options I have in my head is pink horror because it's such a big thing right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be really empowering. But I do like the idea of sticking to some holidays. And that's why I was like, well, I have to do Christmas horror. Like, I'm going to be reading Yuletide stuff around Christmas, which I think is always perfect because I want to be in that mind. So the way the open calls work are usually like, hey, I missed Halloween. Let's do it right now. And then I was picking those and just getting into the Halloween spirit when it wasn't Halloween yet. So I'm really excited, and I'm very excited at our next release, which will be Summerween, and that will be the second kind of edition of this one, which I'm probably going to totally do like another like Halloween horror anthology. Like I think I'm going to play on that because I think it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been so happy that I've been able to work with Andy Sisco. He does Nightmare Soup, and he's done our cover art, and he's going to do the cover art for the next one. I love his work. I supported their Kickstarter, which blew up. It's insane how well it did, which I'm so happy for them. But I'm very honored that I get to work with him. And I did not expect people that I asked, hey, I've never done an anthology before, but I've been around a while and I've supported your books and I'm doing pretty good with that. So you want to write a story for this anthology? And, the people that said yes that I invited, including you, I was very honored that they said yes, Clay and Brian and you. And I was just like, well, these people like have to be part of this because they're like, especially you, because you love Halloween. And one of your questions in the podcast is, what is something you read to get in the mood? And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm on his podcast, but it is true that we bleed orange and black because there's such great short bite-sized stories. And like, I don't always read the whole thing at once, but I will sit there and read one story and be like, okay, we're getting so close to Halloween. I'm so excited. And, it's just this wonderful thing. And these stories are great. These people are incredibly talented. And I'm just so proud. And I feel like they're my little trick-or-treaters. And I'm that witch in the neighborhood that wears a cape and witch hat. And I have all these little trick-or-treaters that they got their candy. And I'm just happy that they get to be part of this with me and that they love Halloween as much as I do.
Do you want to take a little trick-or-treat tour through the table of contents in Twisted Tales to Tell in the Night and maybe pick out a couple stories?
Ooh, yes, that would be fun.
I will jump in with one of my first selections, which is We Don't Go in the Howard's House by William Sterling. This was such a fun story that sort of straddled the line of goosebumps and much edgier horror. It's sort of a nesting doll of nostalgia and terror. I think he really crushed it with this one.
He did. And it was very much like the end of Goosebumps does, where it's like there's this little like, hey, like there's something at the end that like gets you. And he does that. And it just like wrapped up with a beautiful bow. And it didn't go in the direction I thought it was going to go. It reminded me of a few episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps that I remember, everybody has those stories of the haunted house in the neighborhood. And I love that he captured that, but he put, again, a new twist on it. And I did really enjoy that one. I think one of my favorite stories in the collection that stays with me, she just posted about it. She got her author copy that she purchased to support the press. And it's Renee Thomason, Best Friends Forever, because I can still see it in my head. I can see the stairs. I can see her going up to the room. And it's just this awesome way of like the trick-or-treating and like being in the classroom and very like nostalgic of like that day when you would go to school on Halloween and have your costume and be like, okay, I got to get home, and then having this underlying story of like, what's going on with her friend? You don't know. And then just the end of that story, like when I was reading it for submission, I'm like, if they're all this good, I'm going to have a lot of trouble finding just enough to go in here. And like, that's why I ended up having two collections because there was enough stories that I loved. I am very happy with that story for being somebody who had never been published. I mean, she has a lot on her docket now, but I was very impressed with that kind of idea of the story. And if we're invited, some of these I'm like, okay, would I read this out loud? And I am proud to say I've read Booger Sugar out loud three times now.
To who? Your cats?
You read to my cats. What's wrong with that?
Nothing.
I read it. We just went away for a night. For one night, wasn't even far away. We just wanted to go to a lake for a night. And I read around a campfire to my husband who hates. He has worked with lots of bodily fluids in his jobs, unfortunately. He, during COVID, he worked in an assisted living facility, so he had to work during things. So certain bodily fluids he's okay with, like being around. And I'm like Linda from Bob's Burgers. I'm like, certain things I'm just going to puke. Like, I'm like, gross, get that away from me. And boogers for him is something he does not like to talk about. So I read it to him and I stood up around the campfire. And if you don't know this, submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I call the story and then they throw into the fire. It's actually coffee creamer. And I always have coffee creamer when I have a campfire because I take a whole bunch in my hand and I throw it and the fire goes crazy. And then I read it and I read it pretty well that night. And then I read it again to my book club because I was like, hey guys, it's coming up. I'm excited and we're doing it for book club. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek. And
Did you just throw coffee creamer on them?
I didn't because it's, it would have been on my computer because it's virtual. So that would have been really messy. But I did do all the voices that I feel like kind of channeling the way Clay is at events when I see his ridiculous videos on Instagram. There's so many parts of that story. When I'm reading, I'm like, sugar, sugar. Like, I just really have fun with the voices because that's the way I would see him doing it if he was, because he is such a performing author. So that's the way I read it. So that one's just like gross and fun. But then when I read Brian's You're Never Too Old for Halloween, I was like, he did it again. Like as soon as I read that story, I'm like, that's going to be the closer. I knew from the second. And then when I read yours, I was like, that's the first story of the book. I love it because you have a different style of writing than a lot of people I've read. Just like you're a bit more experimental with your formatting and like with the way that you form your stories. I can't really explain it, but I like it. And I think that kind of is different. So I wanted to put it like to be like, hey, this is going to be a little different than what you've read before. So I think the collection it's hard because I love every story for different reasons. So but those are a few. I love every story. I can't pick. It's like picking my favorite cat.
Booger Sugar was on my short list of ones to call out because, I don't know, Clay is like on a run where I had these deep, full body shudders of revulsion when I'm reading his stuff. He's getting like more and more visceral, and it's almost like he's found my weaknesses and he's just slowly hammering away at me. So as much as I love Booger Sugar, dear God, harrowing stuff.
He has ruined pizza cutters for me.
Yeah.
It's not cool. I made pizza the other night and I used a pizza cutter and I'm like, Clay, do you understand what you've done to people with this?
You name-checked Brian McCauley's story, You're Never Too Old for Halloween. That one snuck up on me. I mean, I knew it was going to be good, and I knew there was probably something messed up. But yeah, it's a really creepy, insidious story. It's a nasty story to end on.
And that's why I did it. I wanted to leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth in the best way possible.
Yeah, it's like Necco wafers at the bottom of your trick-or-treat bag.
Oof.
You were talking about curation. What sort of things were you looking for when you chose these stories and when you ordered these stories? You know, there were some divided authors, there were some first-time authors. Some stuff is very much in the vein of Goosebumps. Some stuff is really gnarly, hardcore, graphic, gory. How did you choose, and then how did you order them?
Yeah, so how I chose, it's my first open call, so I was not expecting to have to go through so many stories that had nothing to do with the open call, which is very surprising to me. There was quite a few stories that were submitted that had nothing to do with Halloween, and I'm like, did you even read the open call? So I, got rid of those. And then when I got down to the other ones, it was really just, I did want a mix of this. I didn't want retellings of the specific scary stories that we all love. Like I think it was The Toe and Harold but like Posts by Tanya Pell was definitely like, had some Harold feel, but like it definitely is completely its own. So I wanted atmosphere. That was my big thing when I was looking at it, and it didn't matter if they had been published before. I really wanted short stories. So there were some people that really hit the end of the word count. And if they weren't invited, if it was like they were submitted, I'm like, well, I don't want 10 stories that are 4,000 words. I want more short stories. I wanted a mix of different topics. So like if there's 5 witch stories, I'm probably only going to put 1 or 2 in this one, and then maybe a couple in the other one. Where does it take place? Is it suburbia? Is it a farmhouse? Does it involve pumpkins? Is it have a fresh take on something? Like, I don't know, watching a really quirky Halloween special that Wendy is wild and she just went crazy with it. And I love it. It's weird and awesome. And Spook Alley, it's like, it captures all these different parts of Halloween that we love. And for me, if I could smell leaves and hear the crunching of leaves and like see the trick-or-treaters and see some of my favorite movies in my head and stories in my favorite head from other things, that was a really big part of it. It's because I really wanted them to be short and sweet. I wanted them to capture the whole Halloween season. And I was okay with some of them being super gross and scary, and then some of them being a little bit more tame because I want this to be kind of a way that people can get into horror if they aren't in horror. Or maybe they love horror movies, but they don't read. There's a lot of people I know like that. And I think that collections like this and other short story collections like yours and like, like Scary Stories and In a Dark, Dark Room by Alvin Schwartz, like those stories are just so, I mean, they're even shorter. They're like 400 words and they stay with you. So I think you can do a lot with a little, and that was a big part of it. And then just having different takes on the same thing. Like Witch Apothecary is a very different take on witches than Mrs. King's Candy is. In my head, like I put a couple words next to each story once I had the list and was like, okay, this one's pumpkins. This one's, like just setting really and like focus. This one, the focus is a witch. This one, the focus is nostalgia and a horror special. Okay. I don't want 4 witch stories in a row or whatever, or 4 scary stories in a row. I want people to get a little comfortable reading something a little safer, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more tame, and then get thrown into something gross and scary and not be expecting it. So it's almost like that in itself was scary for them to read it that way. So I think that was the biggest thing. And there's a few stories that some people have been like, that's a really kid-like story. And I'm like, it is. And one of them is The Light Across the Bridge. And I really was surprised I did pick it at first because it's not very scary, but it's so nostalgic and it's so sweet and pure. And I loved that about it. And I still get a little choked up, like the end of it, of her walking away and just saying what she's saying. And I'm like, it's so sweet and it's diverse. It's a really cool way to showcase Day of the Dead in a way, because it isn't just Halloween. There is other cultures and other ways people celebrate. And that was important for me too. I wanted to touch on different ways that different people celebrate this time of year where the veil is the thinnest. And it doesn't always have to be Halloween and candy. It can be so much more than that. And I think these stories show that.
Speaking of playlists, there is a QR code that goes to a music list right up front. Can you pick out a favorite song from the playlist? Is that going to be even harder than picking out a favorite story?
Ooh, well, I don't know it off the top of my head, so I'm going to pull it up on Tidal. And it's a Tidal because a lot of people aren't using Tidal. Spotify is kind of like the Amazon. Tidal gives so much more money to the artist. These are some of my favorite Halloween songs ever. Anytime I'm feeling sad, anytime it's Halloween, over time, some of these have been referenced in other books like Mayfly by C.J. Leaf, who blurbed my first book, which I'm still like want to cry over because she was incredible about that. But she mentioned quite a few songs that I didn't even never heard of. And I'm like, how did I never hear these songs? So I think I would have to go with one of those because the one that makes me laugh and makes me happy is, I can't even see the full name because it's such a long name song, but it's the
riboflavin flavored,
non-carbonated
polyunsaturated blood.
Yes. That might be one of my favorites. If I just want to floss in the kitchen in like like my haunted mask from the haunted mask, Carly Beth's mask, I'll put on like Spooky Scary Skeletons because I actually bought that on VHS. There's a VHS that it's the dancing guy with the pumpkin face and the leotard, and it's just the song on repeat. And I used to play it when I had an actual brick burner. I would just like have it on the background playing, like in little like VHS TV like combo. It brings me lots of joy. So I love a mix of spooky music. It doesn't always have to include the word Halloween, but it's spooky in itself. And I thought that would be fun. And I'm doing that with each of my books now, as each book will have a playlist because I think music is such a wonderful part of writing. And I know that like for me, when I was reading these stories during the submission process, I was listening to instrumentals of Halloween, Trick or Treat, and just that, and Goosebumps, and like just all these themes. But I'm glad that you saw it. Do you have a favorite on that list?
I was very happy to see In the Room Where You Sleep by Dead Man's Bones on the list.
Oh my gosh. I mean, can Ryan Gosling get any better? Yes, he can, when he had this song and this band.
The revelation that Ryan Gosling makes spooky music was pretty incredible. I heard about it on the, I think the Horror Dads podcast. So I checked it out and I was like, no, this is legit. This is actually very, very good stuff. This anthology releases on the
16th. So September 16th, and then Hiding Lies comes out the week before the re-release, and then Small Town Slasher is releasing. And this is one thing I love about having a small press is I can pick the release dates to be whatever I want them to be. And I did specifically pick Small Town Slasher's release date to be the Tuesday after the new Scream comes out.
Nice.
And it works out great.
It's good synergy, yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be up on NetGalley very soon. And Twisted Tales to Tell in the Night will also have a Goodreads giveaway in the next few days. It will be going out. So I'm very excited for that too. And I mean, earlier I know I said this, but I am very excited that I've had a few people read it on NetGalley who have told me they haven't really read anything in a while, but they saw this and it was nostalgic for them to see it. And then they found a few stories and or my friends who support the shop and or still order other stuff that I used to carry a lot of. Like we still get signed copies of, fantasy books and all kinds of genres. So it's really great to get people into Halloween, and I'll tell them which stories to start with. If they're like, I don't know what to start with. Like, I don't always tell people to read it in order. If they're like, I don't read a lot of horror at all, I'd be like, okay, well, maybe start with this one and then go back to the beginning, but it's really fun because it does. And I had somebody tell me that they read one of these stories to one of their kids, and they can read some of these to their kids. I would probably traumatize children if I had them. I would read them, all of them, and scare them. But I do like that some people are finding specific stories to share with their kids. That to me is like, it's the only time of year that I really love kids is Halloween, like because they love candy. They're like, I love all the kids stuff. I just don't really like kids in general, which is why I have cats. But I love kids in costume. I love kids that love to be scared. It's just so fun. And so to see that these are getting read to kids, and it's kind of all full circle for me that the Spooktastic Book Fair reached out to me to have some copies there. And we have 5 authors that are going to be there. And that wasn't planned. They all have their own stuff going on. And it's to have it on a table at a book fair in a library, our first collection, it means so much to me. And I'm really, really proud of that and really happy about that.
That's a great note to end on, but I can imagine a scenario where you are reading to a bunch of kids and then you blind them with a fistful of coffee creamer and then read them booger sugar.
Oh, I've scared kids. I've been trick-or-treating. This is actually going to be the first year besides 2020 that I don't. I'm 40, and I will go for about 20 minutes every year in full costume. And I just go around the neighborhood, a couple places. But there was one little kid that was so frightened by my mask one year that she started like bawling. And I was like, hey, it's just a mask. See, it's just a mask. And I showed it to her and she was like, okay. There is certain neighborhoods. And I think the one I'm in now is going to be wonderful for trick-or-treating. I'm so excited because I've never been able to hand out candy. It's going to be fun. But yeah, I don't think you're ever too old to trick-or-treat. I'm going to be the full bar house. I'm getting full bars. I'm going to hand out bookmarks with this collection, and it has a really cool, it has the photo of the witch and the pumpkin on the front.
Well, according to Brian McCauley, you're never too old for Halloween.
Never too old for Halloween.
Where can our listeners find you online?
I'm mostly on Instagram now. Death by TBR Books is my tag for the press and for the bookshop, and for me, Stephanie Rose Writer.
Excellent. Thank you for hanging out with us, and I can't wait for everyone to get their hands on Twisted Tales to Tell in the Night, a Halloween horror anthology. And let me be the first person to say, Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe and follow. We're now on YouTube. Links are in the show notes. You find me at jeffccarter.com and hit the link to pick up my collection, We Bleed Orange and Black, 31 fun-sized tales for Halloween. Until next time, stay spooktacular.